Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohen, and today I have my book review of the new release book, Cloaked Deception by Timothy Zahn. Timothy Zahn is one of my favorite authors of all time. I've read a ton of his books at this point. I think I'm around like 40 of his books that I've read. And he's a science fiction writer. He's written great original science fiction work like his Conquerors trilogy, his Icarus saga, his Cobra series, his standalones, Manta's Gift, which is my favorite science fiction novel. He has a ton of original science fiction novels. He also has a ton of tie-in materials. He's written a StarCraft novel. He's written some Terminator books, and he's also, of course, most known for his Star Wars books. But even all of those tie-in properties are pretty much sci-fi properties in and of themselves. This is his first, and to my knowledge, only time writing a thriller, a political techno thriller that is not a science fiction book, really. And so it's a very different type of book for Tim to write and for me to read by him, but it was still very enjoyable. With this book, it was actually originally published back in around 2015 under the title Cloak, under a small independent publisher, and I think it just didn't really sell many copies, and that publisher dropped it. And so he got a new publisher, Athen Books, which I have seen making some big news online with some of the authors they've been signing, including they just got Larry Correia to do a big series for them. But Athen Books decided to pick up the book, and because of some logistical issues on Amazon, they had to change the title, so they changed it from Cloak to Cloaked Deception, not to be confused with the Star Wars book by James Luceno, Cloak of Deception. Everyone's been commenting that on my Twitter. But yes, this is Cloaked Deception. This is his thriller, so it's actually quite long for a Timothy Zahn book. In this hardcover, it's actually about 540 pages, and that is most of Tim's works are in the 300 to 400 range. Occasionally he'll go above. So this is a very rare, pretty beefy book. And this print size, the font size, is really small in this book. And so it's, as I said, it's a political techno thriller. The basic premise of this book is that there is a nuclear weapon stolen out of India. And there is also, at the same time, there are several cloaks, which are basically these new material that can make something completely disappear. And some of the cloaks are small. You could put them over a person. Some of the cloaks are larger. You could put it over a building. And the cloaks have all disappeared from and were stolen out of this lab. And so the U.S. government is searching for them separately, not knowing that they're actually tied together. And it's very much, I would describe this book as very much a Tom Clancy, Jack Ryan-esque book, where you have the kind of characters who are kind of thrown into the action, and it's like, I'm just an analyst, I'm not meant to be here. And you've also got the political mystery of the different countries, who's actually the one responsible, kind of the sum of all fears type of storyline here. You've also got the cloaks are very much like the silent propulsion system in The Hunt for Red October, in that this new technology that's not really understood what it does or how it works, and they have to learn that in the book. And it's got elements of some of his Clancy's other books where characters are on the run and the government's kind of hunting them, and it's kind of they don't know all the information. So as I said, it's a very much a Tom Clancy-esque book. So if you like his thrillers, you'll probably like this. But I have the exact same complaint that I do with some of Tom Clancy's work, which is I think it's overlong. I think that there's a lot of sequence in here that could have been easily cut. I think that Tim tried to make it overly complicated and overly detailed, and he could have made it move much faster. With a thriller, you want the pace to move forward quickly. You want it to feel like you're propelling yourself forward in the story. And this one, it feels like it just slows down too much. And then at the end, when it does speed up, it has so much to do that it's almost like kind of Brandon Sanderson fans have something called a Sanderlanche, where at the end there's like an avalanche of action happening at the end in the last 100 or so pages. That happens here too. And I feel like if Tim had just squeezed the story and made it a little bit smaller in scope, maybe a little bit shorter, maybe instead of making it 540 pages, make it just 400 pages, perhaps it would have flowed better and it would have been paced better as well. That being said, I think that the story, the mystery in this book is excellent. I think that the political intrigue is excellent. I think that the action sequences are very well done. And I think that the characters are just okay. The characters could have been a lot stronger. They're not, the weakest I've ever seen from Zahn, but the characters could have been a bit stronger. With Tom Clancy, you pretty much have Jack Ryan, and it's like, oh, Jack's the protagonist. This book doesn't have a clear protagonist in that sense. Perhaps you would argue it's Adam Ross, or perhaps it's Angie Chandler in this book. One of them could be argued as the protagonist, but even then, they're not really a protagonist, and so it's really hard to narrow down. Like, if he had wanted to turn this into a series, which character is he going to follow? It's not very clear, and I think that was a problem. Is you can have a multi-protagonist story, which is fine, but it needs to be kind of obvious who the main character is, and that just never happened in this book. So I do have some comments that are very technical and are very much small, doesn't affect necessarily the story itself from Tim, but more affects the publishing of the book that I want to get into. So if you'll indulge me for a moment, I do want to talk about the production of the book. This is a hardcover, which, as you can see, the cover is printed directly on the book. And I do not like this style at all for a couple reasons. One, it has no dust jacket, which all the rest of my hardcovers pretty much have dust jackets. That's the first problem. The second problem is it feels awkward in your hands when you're holding it and when you're reading it, because it's so hard and it doesn't have the soft elements that a dust jacket would have, and it just doesn't. And because the spine, most spines are curved in some way, and this one is flat, and so it's hard, and so it just doesn't feel right in your hands when you're reading it. Also, because it's just printed straight on, even though that's a pretty competent, well-produced cover design, it just seems cheaply done when you print it directly onto the book itself on a hardcover. On a trade paperback, this would have been totally fine. Since this is a hardcover and you're paying that money, you want it to be professionally done. I do appreciate 8th & Books did put their logo on there, which is nice, because some indie publishers don't do that well. And then I will also point out that in the book itself, the copyright page was very well done. But there is no page listing the author's other novels. And maybe you think, well, this is his first book with Athan, and Athan only includes lists of books by that author from that publisher. I get that, but they didn't even list anything else about Athan, really. It's just blank. There's nothing there. And the About the Author section was atrocious. And when you open it to the back of the book and you see this, it's a pretty easy telltale sign that this publisher uses Amazon's publishing services in some way, because the printing design, the pages design, all of this does not seem the way that the major publishers use with their printers that they use. It was pretty obvious once I got the book that it was an Amazon printed material, which is kind of frustrating. I understand an indie publisher can only do so much, so they need to use Amazon, but I was hoping for more quality since this wasn't just a self-published book, this was a publisher-published book. So, out of the weeds, let's go back to talking about the story in the book itself. I thought that the end of the book was actually really exciting, despite the fact that I thought it was too detailed and too big of a story. Too many plot threads happening. I still thought it was very exciting, and I thought that the mystery of who actually was the bad guy involved, I think was actually quite a clever surprise, because he sets it up at the beginning of the book, but I have to go back to see it because I was like, oh, that's why you included that detail at the beginning of the book, because you want to use it later. I just completely forgot about it because I was just went over my head. So I thought that was pretty genius of Zahn with the mystery. I think Zahn does a pretty good job with mysteries typically. So that is my review of Cloaked Deception, his sort of new, sort of not new political thriller, techno thriller, his first and only book that has like no science fiction to it. Like the cloaks, yes, aren't real, but like it's if you're not going to count Tom Clancy's books as science fiction, then I'm not going to count this as science fiction. So I thought that this was just, a very different type of book, and I hope that Zahn is willing to expand into new territory. I'm afraid that this book's not going to sell well, and so because of that, he's just going to stick with science fiction because that's his wheelhouse, or he'll just stick with tie-in fiction, which he could do, and I'll read it all, but I would like to see him explore different genres. I'd love to see him write an epic fantasy. I'd love to see him write more political thrillers. So if you've read Cloaked Deception, or if you read it when it was just the title Cloak, let me know your thoughts on the book in the comments section down below. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.